This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Winnipeggers should prepare for a hefty property tax hike, the likes of which they haven't seen in more than 3 decades. One of the reasons? All that snow you see outside. More money is needed to pay for clearing it. But the city's 2025 draft budget is also calling for potentially less plowing in the future. Cameron McLean has more.
For years, the city has under-budgeted for snow clearing. It hopes the largest property tax hike in more than 3 decades will change that. Today, Mayor Scott Gillingham and Finance Chair Jeff Rawadi unveiled the first draft of the 2025 budget.
This is a really difficult decision.
Last year, Gillingham managed to keep his promise to keep the property tax increase to 3.5%. This year, the city plans to increase property taxes by 5.95%, which for the owner of a $371,000 home would mean $121 more per year. The mayor says he doesn't take lightly that this is the most significant increase in years.
But I would rather do what I believe the citizens of Winnipeg need for the future than to try to protect myself and ourselves from, from public criticism.
The highest increase since 1990 will add $5 million to the city's snow clearing budget. At the same time, the city will test whether waiting for 15 centimeters to fall before plowing residential streets saves them any money. The current threshold is 10 centimeters. Mark Coho of Bike Winnipeg isn't thrilled with the idea.
I think we're going to find that getting to access to transit, getting towards our bike network, is going to be a lot more difficult.
This year, the money from the property tax increase will also be used to cover transit fare revenue shortfalls and fire paramedic injuries. In future years, the city plans to use it to hire 36 more police officers and 15 more transit safety officers. Kate Kaler of the Social Planning Council of Winnipeg questions whether that money could be better spent on crime prevention.
We're told that the calls for services keep going up, and that's why they need more police officers. The problem is that a great deal of those non-emergency calls could be offloaded onto community-based organizations.
The budget also adds nearly $30 million to next year's road renewal budget. Council will vote on the budget early next year. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
First Nations leaders are calling for an immediate resolution to the Canada Post strike. This is day 27, and it's having a significant impact on remote areas. Some communities are missing out on deliveries of critical supplies, and finding an alternative is more challenging when you're isolated. CBC's Josh Crabb reports.
The holiday season looks a little different this year for Wayne Okamau of God's Lake Narrows. He had to travel to Winnipeg from his fly-in community in northeast Manitoba to check the items off his list.
I came to Christmas shop. I can't shop online anymore.
That's because mail and parcels aren't moving. The strike by postal workers is going into its 4th week, and the union and Canada Post remain far apart. First Nations leaders warn it's affecting more than Christmas shopping.
It's a tremendous burden, a tremendous hardship for a lot of people.
Bunabonabee Cree Nation Chief Richard Hart says important packages aren't coming in or going out. They include payments by check, registering newborns with the federal government so they can access health care, and medical supplies and prescriptions.
People depend on the mail for prescription refills, medications to come in, and a lot of those medications are being held up, or we have to find creative ways to get the medication into the nursing station.
The strike means people have had to rely on shipping available through private airlines. First Nations leaders say that costs more and isn't fair to those who live in isolated and remote communities.
We would like to see the postal service continue to resume. We would like to see Canada take action to make sure it resumes sooner than later.
The issue was discussed at this First Nations Leadership Summit. Keewatin Tribal Council Grand Chief Walter Wastesakut says 9 of 11 communities he represents are remote and isolated, leaving few alternatives to Canada Post.
The communities in the south, they have different couriers that can deliver, pick up packages, make sure they get to their destination. We don't have that luxury in the north.
The federal government is urging both sides to reach a negotiated agreement. It didn't come in time for Wayne Okamau.
The plane costs lots, close to $600 one way.
a price he had to pay to get his packages home to the north in time for Christmas. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A person is dead after a house fire in the RM of North Norfolk. Last night, Mounties and firefighters were called to the home off Provincial Road 352 west of Highway 34. They managed to put the fire out, but when they went inside, they found a person dead. The cause of the fire is still being investigated, and officials haven't released any further information about the deceased. 2 women who pushed to get a Manitoba landfill searched for the remains of missing women are being recognized for their advocacy. Last night, Jordan Myron, the sister of Mercedes Myron, and Cambria Harris, the daughter of Morgan Harris, each received the King Charles III Coronation Medal. The ceremony was held at the Manitoba Legislature to recognize people who have contributed to their community and country. Myron and Harris have been vocal advocates to search the Prairie Green landfill. The province says that search is now officially underway. A teenage girl is now facing charges after police say she carjacked a Winnipeg cab driver. Officers say the 53-year-old taxi driver was helping his passenger carry groceries into a home on Allegheny Drive yesterday afternoon. That's when police say an intoxicated teenager jumped into the driver's seat. As the 16-year-old put the vehicle in reverse, the taxi driver was caught by the door and dragged to the ground. He was treated for minor injuries in hospital. She was found still in the taxi, not far from the scene. The teen is charged with robbery, driving while impaired, and driving without a valid license. It's frigid and getting worse. Temperatures are hovering around the -30 mark, and if you think it's cold, just imagine those who don't have a warm place out of the elements to call home. It's prompted a reminder from the United Way, urging people to not only watch out for those who may be most affected, but to call 211 for help if you see someone struggling. Chelsea Kemp has more.
Racing through the snow by the Assiniboine River, Jessie Wood and her dog embraced the chill. Wood says they're always out, no matter the colds.
I've looked at the temperature for the next week. My dog and I walk every day. We were out when it was -52.
Wood says she tries not to worry too much about when the weather will improve.
That just leads to disappointment and agitation and anxiety. You may as well just embrace it and go on out. And even if it's 5 minutes, get outside, let the wind blow between your ears.
But not everyone has a warm place to go or clothes for the weather, says United Way Winnipeg. That's why they launched 211 Manitoba 4 years ago. Tammy Raymer says these calls can be a matter of life and death.
Many of us have the privilege of a warm space to go to. And you may be driving or you may be at work and you don't know what to do when you see somebody that is unsheltered. In Winnipeg, what you can do is dial 211.
Reimer says people should also keep an eye out for clothing drives so people can get the right clothes to stay warm. Saul Hazrika says layering up is essential in beating the cold, especially when the temperatures drop so suddenly.
-27. It was really all of a sudden, right? Today I even forgot to look at the temperature, what temperature it will be. And yeah, I can feel it now.
Jogger Dino Thornquist says the only thing he counts on is the weather changing suddenly in Winnipeg.
Last week I was running in shorts when it was +4. But this is Winnipeg. It's +4 one day, -25 the next.
Today is Winnipeg's coldest day of the winter so far, and it's expected to stay chilly for a little bit longer. But it should warm up by the weekend. Chelsea Kemp, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, let's bring in weather specialist Riley Lachak. Riley, Dino's out there running in this. My goodness. Not me.
If you're dressing for the weather.
Right?
Yeah,
but the weather we want to look forward to is the weekend. We got a couple more days to get through.
Exactly. I'll start with the extreme cold warning, encompassing all of northwestern Ontario through southern Manitoba, the southern Interlake, Brandon, the Westman region, right up to Dauphin and Swan River. Temperatures overnight -30 or colder. We're looking at wind chill values at around -40 or colder. This is frostbite on exposed skin in less than 10 minutes, so a dangerous cold through the overnight hours tonight. Winnipeg, we actually are already at -30 at the moment, at least at the airport anyway. -28 in Brandon, -25 in Swan River. Factoring in the wind chill here, Brandon feeling like -41 already, factoring in the wind, -43 in Lynn Lake and in Winnipeg. So we are looking at a very cold night ahead across most of Manitoba. Yeah, we're already at that low temperature for tonight. The winds do back off to northwest 10, so likely won't fall much further than that through the overnight hours. -29 first thing in the morning. We're looking at wind chill values again in the morning, close to -40. Again, frostbite on exposed skin in minutes through the morning, and really not getting much better through the afternoon. -23 by the afternoon. Brittany, yes, I'll tell you when we have that warm up when I come back.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
More and more post-secondary students are turning to food banks to put meals on their tables. That story and more after the break. Stay with us. A Manitoba Crown prosecutor behind multiple wrongful convictions has passed away. George Dangerfield's lawyer says he died in Winnipeg last year. Dangerfield led the prosecution in several high-profile cases in a career spanning decades. As the CBC's Arturo Chang reports, people who knew him say he leaves behind a complicated legacy.
He was a star prosecutor in Manitoba courts for decades. George Dangerfield, who led the Crown in many high-profile cases until his retirement in the late 90s. Jay Probert represented him as his lawyer in Dangerfield's later years, but they first met on opposing sides of the courtroom.
Well, he was tough for sure, and he was well prepared, and he was one of the best cross-examiners as a Crown prosecutor than I've ever encountered in my 50 years.
Probert says Dangerfield died in Winnipeg last year. CBC recently learned of his death. It wasn't publicly known. His legacy was tarnished at the end of his career, as several cases he'd prosecuted were later found to be wrongful convictions. First, Thomas Sofano, acquitted in the killing of a teenage girl. Then 6 others, Kyle Unger, Frank Ostrowski, James Driscoll, as well as Brian Anderson and Alan and Clarence Woodhouse, 3 Indigenous men charged in a 1973 murder. All combined, the men spent more than 90 years behind bars.
There was racism inherent from the investigative stage, the prosecutorial stage.
James Lockyer's Innocence Canada helped exonerate the men. He says a common pattern in the cases is the prosecution failing to disclose key evidence.
Mr. Dangerfield was certainly an adept prosecutor. He was certainly had a powerful presence in the courtroom. But I'm afraid he didn't always play it fair. And it's essential in our business, given the stakes, that we always play fair.
But Probert said putting all convictions under Dangerfield's name is wrong.
As far as he was concerned, he did nothing wrong. He worked with what information he received from the police and did a very good job in persuading the jury that those people were guilty.
Ultimately, Dangerfield will be remembered for the mistakes he made. But those that knew him say he was more than that. Respectful, eloquent, and complicated. Arturo Chang, CBC News, Winnipeg.
With food costs rising, more and more post-secondary students are looking for help. As part of our Communities in Focus series, CBC's Jim Agapito visited RRC Polytech's Student Food Bank to hear how it's helping feed hungry students.
We have lots of students in such a crisis that they cannot afford to buy some food.
I know you're busy here. I can see how busy you are. Tell me, like, how much prep is going in? Like, what exactly are you doing right now?
So we are just making food hampers because students will be coming to show up at 2. We have diapers, we have some napkins, and we have some food as well, some personal hygiene products. We have everything to go what a student needs in a month or a 15-day schedule.
And how many people will be using today the food bank?
I have 15 people on the list, but I always make sure I have some extra in case somebody else shows up who's not on the list or who has not been responded.
Who gets what, and you know what you get?
So I have a list from Manitoba Harvest that shows up that, okay, some people need personal hygiene products, some have kids, so that need milk, or somebody's under 12, need diapers or something like that. So I have everything segregated in a list so that I could design hampers specifically to that people.
You basically have 45 minutes to put it together.
Yes.
How difficult is that to do?
Oh, it's I have my volunteers helping me all the time, so it makes it quite easy because they are helping, they are giving me such a hand that, okay, everything looks segregated, everything looks ready.
And you obviously are running this because you care. So how is this help you?
I was a food bank user myself. The food bank has helped me reduce my grocery expenses to more than 50% because I am all by myself, so the food I get is enough for me for 4 weeks.
Can you tell me how important programs like this at RSC Polytech are for the students, especially with inflation and prices of food?
Absolutely. So after COVID, people have seen okay, they are not able to earn much, or the food prices have been hiking up. So we try to help as much we can. So we earlier had a coat program, winter coat program, that helped people to get coat, mitten, socks, caps, and we are also running a food bank so that we could help people to get some food. At least they could not suffer, they could not sleep empty stomach, so they have something to make.
Riley's back now. Riley, we were talking earlier today about how dark it was outside, how cold it was. I've really brought the winter darkness over here into my clothing, and you're trying to bring us a little joy and brightness.
I'm trying to warm us up a little bit.
I'm right now, you're the weekend, is what's happening right now, because we really just need to get through the next few days, which are going to be real cold.
Yeah, really cold. Hard to put a number on it, really. It's going to be dangerously cold out there for the next couple of mornings. Let's have a look at satellite and radar. You can see mostly clear skies. Any heat, residual heat that we had is pretty much gone. It's gone up into the atmosphere. That's what happens when we don't have that cloud blanket, is we see temperatures really diving, especially as we see this real deep trough jet stream allowing some of that very cold air right into the prairie provinces. And that's what you see is what you get really over the next couple of days through Manitoba. So starting tomorrow, mostly sunny skies again, bit of cloud, maybe a few flurries along the Hudson Bay coast. Shamattawa could see a few flurries, even as far south as Gillam, maybe a couple of flurries to the early morning. Otherwise, mainly sunny skies really throughout the day for much of Manitoba tomorrow. A little bit of cloud here and there. We start to see some cloud building in as we get into Friday. This is ahead of some warming. A change in our pattern will allow some much warmer southerly air, along with some windier conditions as we get into the weekend, but that comes with a warm-up. So you can see this deep trough in the jet stream extending way down even into the U.S. Midwest, bringing below seasonal temperatures. This does start to break down and our pattern changes, as I mentioned. As we get into the day on Saturday, you can see this big upper ridge starting to build, and this is going to allow some warmer southerly air into Manitoba and Saskatchewan, really warming us up. But the trade-off is we get a little bit more unsettled weather and maybe some precipitation as we get into the early part of Monday. Ahead of our pattern changing again, you can see the next trough starting to form here. This will fuel a cool down in our temperatures as we get into the long-range forecast into next week. So forecast temperatures first thing in the morning around -30 in Winnipeg. This particular model has us at -29 first thing, close to -30 into northwestern Ontario as well, and below -30. In fact, I've got Wasagaming tonight, Riding Mountain National Park, getting down to -37 overnight tonight. So very cold temperatures. That's not factoring in the wind chill, which you'll see here. We're looking at those values below -40 into the Westman region. So we're looking at frostbite on exposed skin again with values like these in minutes. First thing in the morning, close to or below the -40 mark into the Red River Valley as well. So we are looking at some very cold conditions. Another very cold morning on the way for Friday as well. I've bumped our low down to -32 overnight, and I don't think we're quite done with the fall in temperatures yet, but really not going much further than we are now. -18 for Friday, and then, Brittany, we get warmer temperatures for the weekend. But again, a chance we could see a little bit more snow as we get Sunday into Monday.
Something to look forward to. Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
You can find this holiday display on Lockwood Street just off Kenaston. We have more to come after the break. Stay with us. Retailers are bracing for the impact of the federal government's GST holiday. The GST starts Saturday and will run through February 15th. Under the exemption, essentially all foods in Canada will be tax-free. But many small businesses say they're still confused at what else falls under the exemption. Dan Kelly is the president of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business and joins me now. Hi, Dan.
Good afternoon.
So Dan, let's start with the positives. What are the good aspects of this 2-month tax break?
Well, look, anytime governments reduce taxes, that's generally a good thing, as it leaves more dollars in consumer pockets. More consumer dollars may lead to some increased spend in small and medium-sized companies. So there is the potential, I suppose, for some additional business for small businesses across the country.
So will this help boost that demand? Will it push Canadians to shop small and local? What are you hearing, or what are your thoughts?
I think if this were a permanent reduction in the GST, it might have that effect. But when it's just a temporary 2-month holiday, most small businesses feel like this is not going to lead to any additional sales, simply just move sales from one period to another. In fact, when we did a survey of our small business members across Canada, only 4% of business owners felt that this was going to lead to aggregate more spending in their stores. 66% said that they figured it was just going to move sales, either people delaying purchases until the holiday starts on Saturday, or perhaps buying things and then not purchasing them after the sales tax comes back on in mid-February. That's not going to be a big win. And of course, there's a whole bunch of compliance issues that small businesses have to deal with on top of all of that.
So, of course, on the other side, we've heard about some confusion, really, when it falls to what falls under the exemption. What is now exempt?
Yeah, look, it is a giant mess. I think for restaurants and for food sellers, it's reasonably straightforward. Virtually everything in the grocery store, all the snack food items and drinks are now exempt. Restaurant meals and takeout is going to be exempt from the GST for the next couple of months. But when it comes to retail, it is a confusing mess of goods. It's children's clothes, toys oriented at children, books, some books, and things like a Christmas tree. So it's a grab bag of products, and the challenge that merchants have is trying to discern which of the items that they sell is subject to the holiday and which ones are not. It's not easy. If you're buying a set of Lego, if the Lego set is oriented at somebody 14 or under, it's going to be free of GST. If it's oriented at adults, it's going to be, you're going to continue to charge the tax. If you're buying dolls, a doll for play is GST exempt. A doll for collecting is going to have to charge the tax. And my favorite example in the hobby store, a model airplane. The glue and the paint for the model airplane, if it's in a package and with the rest of the model and oriented at kids, it's going to be GST exempt. If it's oriented at adults, a more complicated model, you're going to have to charge the GST. If you sell the glue and the paint separately, you're going to have to charge the GST. It took us 10 days to get an answer from finance on how to handle model airplanes. And yet hobby store owners are being asked to go through 3,500 items that they might sell and figure out which one is in which column.
Yeah, so this really isn't as easy as some might think it is. Let's talk about the difficulties, not just from what you pointed out already, but just reworking and reprogramming those point of sale systems that are going to need to be done twice now in a very short period of time. How hard is that?
It's not simple. In fact, most businesses have to pull in somebody, an IT professional or technologist, to come and reprogram their machines because they have to hand select the items to which it applies. The average cost of that by according to our survey, was $1,000 in reprogramming hard costs. But get this, you have to continue to charge the tax until the close of your business on December the 13th, that's Friday, and then you have to have the GST off of those goods, the select goods, on Saturday, December the 14th. So every business across Canada that sells any of these items has to pull in somebody Friday night this weekend to be able to reprogram their machine so it's ready to go. And this is all with 2 weeks' notice at the retailer's busiest time of year.
That is difficult. So being extra nice to a lot of your vendors on Friday and Saturday. Just real quickly here, I want to shift gears around the holiday season here. Businesses also dealing with the fallout of the Canada Post strike. What are you hearing from members right now?
Oh, it is also so problematic for retailers. Many of small businesses have hustled to get online, and some retailers are set up exclusively selling online. And for them, the inability to ship anything with Canada Post is causing huge problems. But it's made worse by the fact that now even the private courier network, like FedEx and UPS and Purolator, they are not taking new packages in many markets across the country because of excess demand from the Canada Post strike. So if you haven't got if your goods are not in a courier on their way to their destination now, it's unlikely that they're going to make it there before Christmas. And that means a lot of small retailers are just going to be missing out on sales. And some of that traffic may divert to Amazon and some of the other big box stores that may have their own delivery systems in place.
A lot of moving parts. Dan, thank you so much for your time.
Anytime.
Well, the two sides in the Canada Post strike appear further apart than ever. The company released a statement today saying the union's latest offer would add billions of dollars in unsustainable fixed costs. Stuck in the middle are the many people anxiously awaiting essential documents, including social services checks and passports. Alexander Silberman reports.
My package was delivered to this very postal location.
Yi Ching Huang tracked her passport to this shuttered Toronto post office. It's stuck inside with no way to get it, and a trip for her wedding reception is just weeks away.
Yeah, it's devastating at this point.
Huang is a permanent resident with a Chinese passport that contains visas that are challenging to replace. And there's no resolution in sight after the latest proposal by the union, delivered Monday, was described as a setback by Canada Post.
I feel sorry for the workers. They have to go on strike at this point of year, but then it's also very frustrating for people like us waiting for important documents.
While Huang is currently out of luck, there are some options for Canadian passport holders. Service Canada has held about 185,000 passports since December 1st. They're available for pickup for an extra $20. But it's not just passports.
We think that all options should be in place.
While some federal benefits, including the Canada Pension Plan, are still being delivered, most provincial program checks need to be picked up. That's troubling to this advocate.
Certainly for people who have mobility issues or distance issues, it becomes a real barrier to getting what are absolutely necessary benefits for survival purposes.
Canada Post says mail stuck at distribution centers like this one will be delivered on a first-in, first-out basis when operations resume. But it adds Canadians will continue to feel the impact of the strike long after it's over. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Regina.
The Bank of Canada has made another big cut to its key interest rate. It's the 5th consecutive one since June, but it comes with a warning of uncertain times ahead. Peter Armstrong explains.
The Bank of Canada is trying to thread a particularly slim needle. It wants to get rates lower, but it doesn't want markets to freak out. So once again, it cut 50 basis points, but it added this caveat.
With the policy rate now substantially lower, we anticipate a more gradual approach to monetary policy.
The question is, what does gradual really mean?
Well, we've just cut by 50 basis points at the last two meetings. So more gradual is more gradual than that.
Tiff Macklem's answer is deliberately vague because he sees what you see. Per capita GDP has fallen 6 straight quarters. The unemployment rate is rising. Economists say gradual doesn't mean the rate-cutting cycle has come to an end.
Canadians are going to see even more rate cuts ahead.
Canadians have been clobbered recently. Inflation drove up prices. A slowing economy is eating into economic confidence. So even if those 50 basis point cuts are behind us, economists believe rates need to come down to help navigate the stormy months and years ahead.
RBC sees the Bank of Canada cutting rates down to 2% by the end of next year, believing that the economy is going to need more than just neutral, but a little extra support over that horizon.
That's welcome news to variable rate mortgage holders.
It probably dropped by about $250, $300 a month, so it's definitely a relief there.
Roman Oshepkov saw his mortgage in Red Deer nearly double when rates took off. That extra money helps, but costs are up across the board.
Fuel costs are up. Costs are food for kids and formula and diapers and all that stuff is up. So it's really not that you can buy extra stuff.
And now the economy is facing new threats from incoming U.S. President Donald Trump and his proposed tariffs. And we still don't know what will be targeted, by how much, or how Canada may respond.
So it is not just a cloud of uncertainty, but a very pernicious fog over the entire visibility of the Canadian economy.
The Bank of Canada meets again on January 29th, just a week after the new U.S. president takes office. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
The Reeve of the RM of Emerson Franklin says it's unfortunate, but change at the Canada-U.S. border is inevitable. President-elect Donald Trump continues to warn Canada if it doesn't increase its border security, he'll impose a 25% tariff on Canadian goods. Reeve, Dave Carlson, is also a volunteer firefighter and was on the front lines of dealing with migrants walking through snow to cross into Canada. He says times have changed, with the criminal element moving drugs and people into both the U.S. and Canada.
It's a different world now. I mean, guys used to just cross in their snowmobile and go for a drink or something. You know, like that was kind of the old days. That's the way it was. You know, people just kind of crossing here and there, and everyone kind of knew each other for more or less. It's unfortunate that times have changed, and no one wants to see this evolution.
Carlson welcomes an increase in security, including drones and helicopters, if it can reduce drugs, guns, and the criminal element crossing into Canada. Authorities say the devastating wildfire burning through Malibu is only about 7% contained. That's not a good sign, but they say the dry Santa Ana winds that are fueling the fire are starting to die down. More on that straight ahead. Stay with us. A major wildfire fanned by strong winds continues to burn out of control in Southern California. But changing weather conditions may bring some relief. Steve Futterman is in Malibu with the latest.
Today, finally some good news, as for the first time, firefighters are beginning to get the upper hand on this blaze. Early this morning, some fresh new fighters. With tools in hand, their job today was to help establish a fire perimeter to stop the fire from spreading. Overnight, there were huge hotspots engulfing dry brush which hasn't burned in years. Water-dropping helicopters worked around the clock. And all this work paid off. This morning, fire officials announced the fire is now 7% contained. Not that much, but...
I mean, 7% is 7% than better than yesterday. Obviously, the weather is cooperating. That plays a huge role in our containment efforts to get that fire line put in.
The winds haven't completely gone away, but they have greatly diminished. Still, the fire continues to grow, although much more slowly now.
This house is gonna go down, bro.
At times, the flames seem overwhelming. There has been damage to homes and other structures. The numbers, though, are quite low. And there have been some nervous moments.
Oh my God, I can smell the smoke.
For the unlucky ones, they have to now assess the damage.
Sparks and embers blowing everywhere, and you think the world's coming to an end.
Another sign that the worst may be over, today students at Pepperdine University were no longer required to shelter in place. With finally some containment and weather conditions improving, especially the winds, fire crews are more optimistic than ever that they are getting the upper hand. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Malibu, California.
Riley's back now. Riley, if people are home and in for the night, good place to stay. And if you work from home, consider yourself lucky for the next few days if you don't have to leave the house.
I am already contemplating my walk home later tonight.
I said I'm going to call in cold instead of calling in sick, but that's not going to happen. I'll still be here.
The pups are going to be running in and running out.
Yeah, short
very
walks,
quick in
I think.
the morning. Yeah,
If any.
I would avoid it if you can
Yeah.
because we're looking at some very, very cold conditions. Here is your dog walking forecast as we get into Thursday morning. Another day similar to today, where we are looking at another very cold but brighter day as we head into Thursday once again. Zoe and Maya probably best inside for the day tomorrow. Thanks, Marie, for sending these pictures in. Talk back at cbc.ca is where you can send those to. Around minus 30 first thing in the morning across Winnipeg, really across the Red River Valley, looking at wind chill values close to minus 40 first thing in the morning, really across southern Manitoba or colder. Minus 23 by 4 o'clock in the afternoon and dipping once again, very cold once again tomorrow night into Friday. Then that's when we start to change gears slowly but surely as we head closer to the weekend. I want to show you a temperature contrast here very quickly. Minus 27 in Selkirk, minus 29 in Gimli. The airport wide open, minus 30 at the moment. The Forks, though, minus 25. So some parts of the city, yes, we'll get down to that minus 32, maybe even minus 33 overnight tonight. But some parts of the city likely staying very close to minus 30 through the overnight hours. Across the rest of southern Manitoba, minus 28s for Dauphin and Roblin. Barons River, minus 32, and already looking at temperatures close to or colder than minus 30 into far northern Manitoba, and a minus 19 in Churchill. So overnight tonight, temperatures continue to fall. We're looking at another, as I mentioned, very cold one overnight tonight, minus 31s. Minus 30s for Emerson, Sprague, Peguis, Gimli, minus 28s, minus 32s, minus 33s into the Westman region through the overnight hours, minus 29 into Dooley Lake, minus 32 in Lynn Lake. We're looking at wind chill values in that northwestern corner of the province, close to minus 40 overnight tonight once again, and really don't go too far tomorrow through the afternoon. Mostly sunny skies through the northwest. Temperatures barely getting above minus 25 through the afternoon hours. A bit cloudier. Slight chance of a couple more flurries through Shamattawa and along the Hudson Bay coast tomorrow. Temperatures kind of under a blanket with that cloud cover into the minus teens. And in the south, again, a very cold one tomorrow. We're looking at temperatures warming up by lunchtime tomorrow. closer to -24 by lunch for Winnipeg. -28, -27 still for Brandon. Another very cold one in the west again tomorrow, Brittany. We're looking at temperatures barely getting above -25 into western Manitoba. A little bit of cloud cover into northwestern Ontario. Your 7-day forecast is coming up.
All right. Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, when we think of Manitoba wildlife, a cougar isn't always the first animal that comes to mind. They're elusive and usually go unseen. But thanks to a new Manitoba Museum exhibit, you can get an up-close look at the story of a prairie cougar with a pretty wild story. The exhibit tells the story of cougar known as SK10. This morning on CBC Information Radio, Marcy Marcusa spoke with the museum's curator of zoology about how the animal ended up here.
The museum received this animal in 2020, but it was part of a study at the University of Alberta, and they did tag this animal as a cub. It was about little over a year old, and they put a satellite collar on the animal, and they managed to track this for quite a long time. And in just 3 months, it traveled about 750 kilometers. It was born in the Cypress Hills of Saskatchewan, wandered down into Montana, then I guess didn't like the political situation there and came back up into Canada, ended up in the Moose Mountains in Saskatchewan. And then the satellite tracking device failed. But it was miraculously found again on some trail cameras in Riding Mountain National Park just a few years later. So from 2016 to 2018, it was tracked through the park on several trail cams, and we have those images in the exhibit so people can actually see the animal traveling as it was captured on those trail cams. And then a couple of years later, unfortunately, it was snared in a legal coyote trap or a coyote snare. And that's when we got the call from Manitoba Wildlife, received the animal, worked with the zoo to process it. So we have the skin of the animal mounted right beside its own skeleton. And so people can get an up-close look at this amazing animal that traveled well over 1,000 kilometers from where it was born to end up being in Manitoba.
Tell me a little bit about why this is special, because, cougars are, as I mentioned, they're elusive, they can be sly in the woods, but how unusual is it for a cougar to travel a distance like that?
It is quite unusual. This animal traveled the furthest of any that was studied in that particular research. Most of them, male cougars and females too, do need to leave the home range of their mothers because obviously the environment isn't going to be able to support all those animals. So they do have to leave and look for a new range for themselves. But it is a little bit unusual for them to move quite that far. Most of our cougars, though, do come from Saskatchewan and probably South Dakota. Our animals do travel quite a long ways to get here.
Is it strange for them to be found in Riding Mountain National Park?
No, it's most of the records that we have are from the western part of the province, usually around forested areas, places like Turtle Mountain, Riding Mountain National Park, Duck Mountain. And it's about this time of year that we do sometimes get specimens, unfortunately, through legal trapping. And then those animals do go to museums. There probably have been cougars in Manitoba for thousands of years, but we actually didn't have any physical evidence of them occurring here until 1973, just northwest or northeast of Winnipeg, near Stead. There was a cougar that was shot because it was attacking some people's dogs.
What do you hope people
And-
take away from the exhibit? Obviously, there's so much that you've learned from tracking this animal, and you have so much for people to look and understand. But what do you hope people take from it?
Well, I'd like people to figure out, to actually even know that cougars occur in Manitoba, because I think a lot of people are quite surprised to find out that they do occur here, and to understand the difficulties that some of these animals have in living in the environment that we've created. The prairies and much of Manitoba has been quite transformed by human activities, and the idea that an animal has to travel potentially, 1,000 kilometers from where it was born to try to find a place to live is something that we should ponder and consider in our interaction with the environment.
Well, it's another cold night ahead. Riley will tell us just how bad it's going to get for how long after the break. We're right back after this. Poinsettias are red and Christmassy, but the plant is originally from Mexico, and its Spanish name translates to Christmas Eve. Producers in Mexico City use traditional methods to grow them on floating gardens. Customers come from far away to buy the plants from greenhouses near canals. It's a local tradition to adorn homes, churches, and even roads with the sea of red. The English name comes from Joel Robert Poinsett. He was the first U.S. ambassador to Mexico who took the plant back to his home state of South Carolina in the 1820s.
All right, looking at your 7-day forecast now. We are looking at temperatures minus 32 overnight tonight in Winnipeg. Doesn't mean it won't get maybe a touch colder in your backyard or maybe a little warmer, but it's probably a good benchmark at this point. Wind chill in the morning close to minus 40, really across or colder across southern Manitoba. Again, frostbite on exposed skin in minutes. Minus 18 for Friday. Then we warm up. We see a good chance of some flurries, some light snow Sunday into Monday. Temperatures close to freezing, and then we see our temperature really dropping through the day on Monday to highs of minus 12 for Tuesday and Wednesday with sun and clouds into next week. The St. Adolphe Curling Club welcomed a whole squad of celebrity athletes on Saturday night.
But they aren't known for their curling. Here's your daily lift.
Well, most of them couldn't figure out which hand to throw with, like if they were left-handed, right-handed, like that was already an issue at the start. So like I answered a lot of questions on how to slide out. And then balance is such a huge issue. Like curling is all balance. So watching them try and slide out, and a lot of them bailed at first.
The Columbus Blue Jackets were in Winnipeg to play the Jets, and thanks to a very special invite, the team took a little trip outside the perimeter and learned how to throw some rocks.
St. Adolphe Curling Club member Lauren Evison may have had something to do with this. She is the niece of Columbus Blue Jackets head coach Dean Evison. So
they didn't get warmer in there.
No.
maybe a little bit. They're just in sweaters. They didn't have any big jackets. They'll need to come back in February when you can do that out on the river, on the frozen river for the Bonspiel, and then they'll really get a taste of Winnipeg.
They'll really get a taste of Winnipeg if you do that. Bonus points if they dress for the weather.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you all dress for the weather. If you have to venture outside over the next couple of days, if you don't, hey, even better, stay inside where it's nice and warm.
Good to stay inside. Don't forget to plug in the cars, keep the pets inside because they will get really cold out in this weather as well.
Exactly. We will see you back here tomorrow. Have a wonderful night.